Okay, so today we're going to look at getting your vehicle set up on the Ecumasters EMU Black software. This is going to be a very simple, quick video on what you need and the most important things to get the car started if you have everything properly wired and all the required sensors you need for the ECU. On my setup, I'm running a mechanical fuel pressure regulator, E85, R8 coils, stock JZ heads, bigger turbo, 15 pounds of wastegate boost. I'm not running a boost controller, straight spring pressure, and no drive-by-wire on the JZ. I deleted it. So let's hop into the ECU itself and show you guys where you guys can start as far as getting the ECU connected and matching with what setup you have. Okay, so starting off with the bare minimums when it comes to this software, you want to find a base map that roughly suits your vehicle's specifications. Thankfully enough, Ecumasters has provided a good chunk of the bare minimum when it comes to base maps just to get your car assigned to let's say sensor outputs and trigger teeth when it comes to your proper crank and all that. So this is all the bare minimum you need to get your car set up. For the most part, this is what I used. I used the 2JZ GTE VVTi base map that they had to offer, that you can find on their their base maps from here, Toyota, and then find the car you need. And it worked. I got the car to start on that base map, and I had to do some tweaking obviously so it can calibrate the correct sensors and whatnot, but it worked. So they do work, and they are very helpful for someone who is just starting and for someone who is going in super blind like myself, which I literally just played with the whole car and it worked, and I just kept learning and changing as time moved on. Other than that, a big important thing is once you have your car to a base map, you want to make sure that it's reading to all of its correct sensors that you have. The assigned outputs function on this software is super helpful. You can see the injectors assigned to the injector outputs, the coil outputs. You can check to make sure that you have your throttle position sensor, your throttle position sensors wired, your VVTi sensors, your cam sensors, everything is going to be here. Coolant sensors, TAC if you need it. All of these will be assigned to somewhere. All these auxiliaries, this used to be to a boost solenoid, took it off because I didn't want to use it anymore because it wasn't working, or my dumbass didn't plumb the wastegate right, so it wasn't working at the time, but I was like, forget it, I don't need it. All of these can be used, so you have a lot of outputs that you can use if you want to apply, let's say, like electronic fuel pressure sensors, oil pressure sensors that the ECU can read. Other than that, once you have everything assigned, it's all about calibration. Some of the most important sensors that you're going to need are obviously your O2 sensors, coolant temp sensors, intake air temp sensors, map sensors, and to be honest, that's about it. As far as getting the bare minimum of the car running, that's about what you need. All my car has is, it has the Ecumasters coolant temp sensor, it has the Ecumasters using the internal map sensor, it's using the Ecumasters intake air temp sensor. It's using all of the sensors that it needs to get the car reading correctly as far as TPS map, coolant temp, intake air temp. I do not have an exhaust gas temp sensor that I really don't need. But other than that, also the O2 sensors are very important. The one thing I like about this software in particular is that you can choose to have two sensors, one running externally with just the controller and the other one specifically for the ECU. I like this because I've seen countless times where an O2 sensor has failed on, let's say, a link ECU, but you would never know because this is correlated. The link ECUs only take one O2 sensor that is like spliced to the outputs. Well, not spliced, but is connected to the ECU itself, and it uses one sensor for two functions. I don't like that, just in case something was to happen. I've been a victim of fake Bosch sensors, and I've had a fake sensor in this car before, and it's really dumb because you think it's broken, you don't know, and then you start trying to test stuff, and then you find out it was just a bad O2 sensor, leading you to believe, you know, making you freak out and have panic attacks because you think your car's running hella lean, but no, it's just fucking the sensor that's broken. So other than that, make sure your sensors are all connected, reading correctly, and other than that, you should be good to go. If you want to double check to make sure your things are reading correctly, your sensor setups right here in the sensor setups function, you can look at your intake air temp sensor wizards, and this will put all of the calibrated specs to the sensor that you have. So I'm using the intake air temp sensor from Ecumasters. So put the part number in to the one that's matched up on their website, that the one I bought, and okay, and it already calibrates it for you. Same thing with the coolant temp sensor. I'm using the one from Ecumasters. Throw it in there, click the one you need, and you can actually choose the OEM ones too. See Ecumasters oil temp or whatever it is, and it works. Bingo. And it's already calibrated for you. Same thing with map sensors. Make sure if you're using the intake air temps, if you're using the internal map sensor, click the internal map sensor. So you're done there. You don't really need to touch TPS unless you're really playing with it. If you want to change your min max, other than that, you will kind of see if you have like TPS problems, you'll see it there. But other than that, I didn't play with it. Oxygen sensors, obviously, I'm going with a wideband 4.9, and I did a conservative heat up because you can kill the life of O2 sensors really fast if you try and do like a, you know, like a fast heat up, always active, you know, that shit will kill your sensors. Other than that, to verify that everything is working correctly, you can simply, you know, turn the ECU on, plug in my USB, and you can see at the bottom corner that we have verified, and it is connected, and there you go. So now I have verification that I'm fully connected to the ECU, and this is everything. You can see my battery voltage 12.54, and it's kind of going up and down because it is connected. And other than that, we should be good. You can test everything here, test outputs function. If I want to, let's say, test the injectors, I'll show you. So we'll test the injector, and let's hear it. So see if you can hear it. Hopefully you guys can. Hear it, but the injectors were being tested, and you can hear an audible click from the injector obviously firing. Same thing with any other output that you think you can test, would be here, and you can test any of these, put a test light to the pigtail, and you can see that it's getting signal. Other than that, you should be ready to try and get the motor started. As for fuel tables go, this is not going to change now, but this is enough to get the car running on whatever it needs to get running. So this will not be touched until you're tuning or trying to get it to idle right. But other than that, you should be good. So let's go out there. I'm going to be switching cameras to the GoPro to show you guys the part where a timing gun comes in handy, especially when trying to get a car started on an aftermarket ECU. Okay, so looking at the next important part, we're talking about timing. Base timing is super important when even trying to get the car to start, and sometimes it can be the biggest problem. This is the part where you need to do the research for your vehicle as far as timing goes, base timing, or if you have changed anything when it comes to cam sensors, like adjustable cam sensors, or changed your trigger, your crank tooth, your crank wheel. You need to make sure that you have everything timed and you know what it's timed at. I've seen a lot of people give up because they can't even get the car started, even though everything is reading correctly, but they just didn't have timing right, and the car was never running the way it should have been running. Other than that, I know that when I bought this car, it was completely OEM, was untouched, and as far as you know, base timing goes, the stock base timing on a 2JZ is 10 degrees timing. And let's see if I can grab my flashlight. You can see that down here, you can see it right there. I actually painted the teeth on the back cover to show me where I can read it. I have an ATI balancer, and you can see actually right there, let's see, I don't want to shine directly on it, but that little mark right there on the wheel itself is top dead center, bottom top dead center. So I know that when I put the timing light up to this, it should say 10 degrees timing, base timing when it's idling. That's what I need it to be at, because that is what it's set to on the computer in correlation to the motor. This is base timing to get the car running and idling the way it needs to be, idling. If you run into any other issues as far as idling goes, it might be the fuel table. It might be just because you need to adjust you need to manually adjust the idle on the vehicle. It all depends. This car this motor never came with an idle air control valve, so that's one less thing I got to worry about. So everything is all manual and fuel on the fuel table via that cell when you go to tuning. Other than that, I'm going to get the car started, and I'm going to show you guys what I mean about base timing. But before I do that, it's always important, remember, to fully understand what your car is at idle and base timing goes. One more important thing that I forgot to mention was the cool thing about the EMU Black software and the Ecumasters Classic software, and this goes for also Link ECU, so if anybody's on there, basically any aftermarket ECU has this function, is you can actually lock the ignition angle of the car. So that means that the fuel table and anything else that could influence the timing of the vehicle will not be affecting the ignition angle. It will lock that ignition angle so that you can set base timing to get the car to, so the car will not start, but at this point you can play with timing to check to make sure that the car is running correctly. At this point, this is what you want to do. You want to lock the ignition angle so that it prevents the car from starting, and you want to make sure that the car is timed before you start it, before you actually attempt to start it. And when trying to time the car or set a base timing, it would be right here where it says cranking ignition angle. You want to do 10 degrees, and that means, well, I decided to go at 10 degrees because that's what it's set at the bottom of 10 degrees. So as you can see, it's matching from the motor to the computer, so it's ready to be started. Anything here as far as the sensor type, the trigger type, all that came from the base map that I chose, so I didn't even have to play with any of that, and it works. That's the actual 2JZ, trigger specifications, and it worked. So thanks for them for doing that, and I really didn't have to play with it at all. So let's get it started. I'm gonna switch over to the GoPro, and I'll show you guys how we're doing. I'll show you guys how I go about timing the car or checking timing. Okay, I got the timing light on, ignition coil 1. I got it wired up and everything. As you can see, it's on. I'm not going to adjust anything as far as ignition lock. I'm not gonna even plug in my computer to the ECU because I know it's running correct. But to let you guys know that if you were to lock the ignition angle and try and play with base timing, what this does is means that it's only going to lock it. It's basically only going to lock the car at idle, which means you will not be able to accelerate, like rev it or anything, because it's locking the angle at that timing. You're not going to accelerate. You're simply going to keep the car at idle so you can play with timing to make sure everything is reading correctly. A very big help in case any of you guys have questions is the little question mark up here. Gives you guys a very good write-up of what you need to understand as far as when you start playing with all this stuff. Almost all of the sections have that little question mark, so if anytime you have a question that maybe I didn't answer or you need to find answers for, that's always helpful, and emailing them always helps. But okay, I'm gonna start it. I'm gonna start the car. I'll just go ahead and point the timing light. Obviously start flashing, but I'll point it and show you that, and hopefully you guys can see that it's at 10 degrees base timing. So let's go. Okay, so we got the car turned on, and you can see it's timing, it's nice and bright, and you can see this is what the RPM is it's reading at. That's saying that's the RPM, and from this you can see we're at, let's see if I'm at 0. So right now I want to see where I'm at as far as base timing. So as you can see here, you can kind of see, which you probably can, we're at exactly 10 degrees. Slightly a little bit, maybe 5, but that's about right. 10 degrees is enough to get the car started, and I want to keep it at 10 degrees because technically that's a little advanced. So that in a way helps the car start sooner, or keeps it idling at a very low RPM. So from that you can see that we're at 10 degrees on the car, and the car is obviously 10 degrees. And other than that, it works very well. So when it comes to finding what your car is timed at, be sure to just double check it and make sure it's linked up with the ECU. Some cars only need a little bit to get going, so it doesn't have to be exact. A rough estimate works, and then the rest will come when you're actually tuning the vehicle, because at that point when you go to ignition table, you are playing with the ignition here and advancing it manually on the ignition side, so you'll have the maximum efficiency of timing on full throttle, or let's say, you know, cruising speeds. So you don't need to worry, as long as the car's idling and it can rev and it's holding its idle at that base timing, then you're all set, and all the thing that's left is obviously a street tune or a dyno tune. It's always good to check your timing when it's warm. I didn't even let it get warmed up, but other than that, it's good. I'm gonna kill the car. We're gonna go back into the car, and I'll do one last little overview of what I went over, and hopefully it will be helpful. Hopefully this overall video was helpful for anyone trying to get their car set up on an aftermarket ECU. Link ECU is the same story. Get your sensors together, get them all situated, and you shouldn't have a problem starting the car if base timing is correct. So I'll kill the car, we'll go over it, and we'll see how it is. Okay, so we're wrapping up. Hopefully you took something away from this video. The main thing I wanted to stress about getting your car started up on any aftermarket ECU is mainly sensor calibrations and making sure everything is reading from the computer to the motor. This is important because the car needs essential sensors to function properly depending on your setup. Some setups are obviously more complex than others. I went for the bare minimum, so obviously all I need is coolant temp sensor, oil pressure sensor, intake air temp sensor, map sensor, and that's it. Throttle position sensor, everything mechanical. I deleted anything electrical, like the electronic throttle, drive-by-wire system, all that's gone. I really wanted to go for a bare minimum JZ that can just work as mechanical as possible. Same thing, just using wastegate boost pressure, and it works. Nothing's giving me problems, and it's functioning perfectly fine every single time I drive the car. Other than that, hopefully this is a very helpful video for anyone that's trying to get their car started or set up on an aftermarket ECU. Timing is a very big factor when it comes to getting your car set up. So take the extra time when base timing. Hopefully when it comes to building motors, make sure you take note of your base timing, of how you're timing it. It's super important when trying to get the car to start. And other than that, you should be all set. Once you have timing set and all your coils, injectors, firing order, everything is already set to what it needs to be set to, the car should have no problem starting, and you should be good to go. If anything, if there's any problems, anything will pop up under here. You have like check engine lights, engine protection, but that all comes after, and it obviously can get more complex with other things such as boost, PID parameters. Like, you know, the ECU is endless. It keeps going on and on. You can do a bunch of other things, traction control. So take your time to dig into the software. It's a very easy to learn software that is super helpful, and always reach out to forums and other people to get answers to questions you may have. If you have any questions or you want me to dig deep into other things such as boost solenoids, which are cool, drive-by-wire, maybe you want me to do a two-step or launch control, tutorial on how to set one of those up on these ECUs, go ahead and drop it. I'll be down to make a detailed video on it. I like doing this, so let me know. Hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully you can pull something out of it, but always refer to the Ecumasters EMU manuals. Take your time to read them. They're very helpful for anything you may have. So thanks. Stay tuned.